Please welcome our curator and host of this session, application architect for AI in news products and workflows, and founder of StoryFlow, David Caswell.
And, there we go. That sounds better. This is going to be 90 minutes, and we're going to kind of mix things up a little bit here. We have three very interesting, talented presenters, and we're going to go through this little presentation here. I'll just do a few slides giving some overview, and then we'll go through three other presentations, and then we'll have this conversation. And then we'll open it up for some questions to the audience. So we're kind of breaking it up a little bit. The three presenters we have Lily Maffei from Zamane Media, based in Amsterdam. She's the communications lead and an editor at Zamane. We have Sultan Suleymanov from Medusa in Riga, and he's the publisher for Medusa in English. And then we have Jody Doherty-Cove from NewsQuest, based in Brighton in the UK, and he's the head of the automation team at NewsQuest. So I'm just going to start off here and just give a few overview slides. I think we all kind of get this. This is a very condensed quote that I just love from Jelani Cobb, who's the dean of the Columbia Journalism School. And some of the words in here I really like are unignorable. For journalism, this is unignorable. And there's also this sort of phrase about journalism organizing itself around AI. AI is not going to organize itself around journalism. This is just a reality in the world that journalism is going to have to adapt to. Just to put some timeline context on it, looking at this first timeline here, there's all of these things that have happened in the AI world, from the big data era all the way up to ChatGPT being released. And then also in journalism, back in 2014, we had the Associated Press started to publish automated articles, although not from language models, still automated articles. And then the Wall Street Journal starts publishing automated articles that were produced using language models as early as 2021. And so these are the big highlights in journalism. But this whole era here, this first era, AI was pretty inaccessible. Like, it wasn't really, front of mind for most people in news organizations. It was like a team somewhere. There was data warehouses, data scientists, data engineering teams, these big proprietary models that were, recommender systems or subscription models, dynamic paywalls, all this kind of stuff. And then, after the ChatGPT moment, we're in this kind of new generative AI world, this second era, and it's very, very different. It's accessible. People can just subscribe to things and use them. It's about user interfaces and APIs. So even developers who are not very skilled with these tools can use these. They can fine-tune models. They can do complicated things using API calls to large language models. And as a result, we're doing things in workflows and in products, in audience-facing products. You saw some excellent examples earlier on. And this is the second era that we're in. To get into that a little bit more specifically, before ChatGPT, roughly nobody cared. Seriously, it was very hard to get senior leadership attention on AI before that moment. Last year, there was just this lot of interest in what this is. What is AI? What is generative AI? What can it do? Just this sort of insatiable interest in learning about this stuff. And that's kind of what I think this time last year at this conference, and certainly the talk that I did then was kind of focused on that. But now I think we're maybe past that, or a lot of organizations are past that. And we're familiar with language models. We're familiar with with some of the more exotic things like the videos from Sora and some of these things. And we're kind of like, okay, what can we do with these? Like, what are the ways that we can bring value to our audiences from these tools? And so to look at it in yet another timeline, there's a lot of conversation, I think, around the conference here about this difference between this phase that we're in now around efficiency, around making the SEO work better and making summaries in a more efficient way, and so on. But there's also this sort of recognition that we, as an industry, have to start thinking about what's going to happen a little further into the future when the big pieces of the ecosystem kind of change. Generative search, conversational interfaces, news gathering by maybe non-traditional participants and so on. This new ecosystem, this new information ecosystem that at some point is coming. But what we'll talk about here in this session is still mostly going to be about this this efficiency phase. This is kind of what we'll be focusing on, because a lot of us are still, how do we get started in this? To look at it in a slightly different way, we've got all of this amazing functionality, this sort of set of models that are miraculous in so many ways. Intelligence as a utility, just ask and it responds. And all of these other functions that AI can do. And we also have all of these needs, audience needs. They've been around for, I don't know, hundreds of thousands of years, I guess. Information needs that people have. What is valuable in terms of information, news information, societal information, civic information to audiences. Organizational needs, who's going to pay the bills, how do we serve people, these kind of things. And then, the bigger societies, how do we keep democracies functioning by having informed publics and all this stuff. And so the needs are there, and now the fundamental capabilities are there. And I think what we're all doing here, and you saw some excellent examples in the last session of this, we're trying to figure out all these things. What are the applications for this stuff? What are the workflows that we use this stuff in, the products that we use? And this is kind of what we're exploring, and this is what we'll talk about in this session. And we've been through this before in many different guises. These models that we're dealing with, they're general purpose technologies, right? And we've seen general purpose technologies before. One of them was electricity. There's many others. And these things, when they arrive, they seem like miracles, like electricity. Like you plug something into a wall and powerful forces come out that do work. It was unimaginable, unimaginable at the time. And this is an example of a factory before electricity, and there was steam engines at one end of the factory, and they would have these big shafts, and there was belts that came off the shafts, and they would drive the machines. This is how factories worked for a very long time, for a century and a half. And then electricity shows up, and it's utterly different. But it took a while, like it took decades to rearrange how factories were organized, to kind of move the wires, the shafts into wires. But it didn't just change sort of the layout of the factory, it changed how factories were financed. You could be much more modular. It changed how workforces in factories were organized. You didn't need these sort of people as parts of machines. You could have now people that could do things in much more flexible ways. And so everything about factories changed because of electricity, and also in like the home life and other places too. But it took a long time. Like the general purpose functionality shows up, and the needs are there, but kind of figuring out what that application layer is takes some time. So that's what we're going to talk about here. Again, these are our presenters, Lily, Sultan, and Jody. And so I'm going to hand over to Lily now, if that's okay, and she'll take you through a brief introduction to her organization and what they're doing with AI, and then we'll hear from Sultan and Jody as well.